Hey there, welcome to dotnetFlix. So today Willem is back on the show. Willem, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good.
Good, good. So knowing you, we are going to talk about AI, right?
Uh, yeah, sorry. It is about AI, but different
Don't be
this time.
sorry. It's really interesting. It's
Yeah.
a lot happening in the AI
Y-
space.
Yeah, it's going very fast. GitHub has been quite busy lately. So I'm actually going to show you something
Yeah.
that when I showed it to a couple of managers at work, I got some messages back that I'm not going to repeat, but it's sort of, oh crap, something happened. Uh, three times even. So that's kind of special, I think, about what we're going to talk about today.
Hmm. And
Um,
and if you talk about GitHub, Willem, we all know GitHub, of course, as this online space that you use for your open source projects and stuff like that. But how does that relate to AI, etc. For people that don't know?
GitHub is well known for its source control and build facilities that they have and issue
Hmm.
management. And the past few years, they've introduced GitHub Copilot. I
Ah,
guess a lot
okay.
of people know that tool as well. So that's the supercharged intelligence, I would call it. So it can help you write tests. It has an intelligent autocomplete that goes well beyond single line completion. So it can complete whole classes and
Oh, wow.
files.
Cool.
It's
Yeah,
also
that's pretty
really
amazing.
good at explaining code to you. So I use it to understand my code that I wrote more than a year ago.
Oh yeah, uh,
Sometimes
I,
code that I wrote last week.
I have to admit that I use it for that as well, for explaining code that I wrote 6 weeks ago. So I guess I'm a little bit worse at remembering stuff than you are. Uh, but yeah, while Copilot is super awesome, I think it's actually only the first step in using AI for coding stuff.
Hmm.
And Copilot Workspace is a new tool by GitHub. I would call it this next generation of AI tooling that's capable of writing full code bases.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
so it goes well beyond a single file. And I managed to write features for my applications that I work on without writing a single line of code. I,
Hmm.
I don't know if we can achieve that today because the product is in technical preview and it might break on us or produce answers that don't make sense in any way possible.
That's
I've
always
had
the
that
best
happen to me
demos.
as well.
Yeah. Those are the
Yeah.
best demos, so we won't be worried.
So before we start coding, actually, Copilot Workspace is a rather new project. It was developed in the past few months. It's still
Okay.
still under active development even. So things change every week, and sometimes I get releases in the middle of the week to help me out with bugs that happen. Um, and the idea is that you start with an issue and you can in that issue you could either have a bug or a feature that you want to implement. The bug you want to fix, of course, and the feature you want to implement. You could also say, I want a feature to break my code, but that happens automatically for you. Um, and then from that issue, you can use Copilot Workspace to implement your code. That's the idea behind this tool.
Hmm. Okay.
So you won't see me write a lot of code actually in this session, and uh, I hope that people sort of get a glimpse of what's possible with AI tooling now. Because again, this is the second step in using AI for coding, but I think we will get a lot more in the future. There are more things coming up at GitHub and other companies that will probably change our job forever if this doesn't
Interesting.
already. So
Show
yeah,
us the
let's
money. Okay, we will.
cool. So what I have here is Copilot Workspace. This is the website where everything happens around CodeSpace. But this is actually a sort of a placeholder page. This is not a final product. What you see here is that I have a list of repositories that I worked on in recent days. There's a workshop that I presented. There's a paper of the week application that I have, a tool for prompt testing, and some other internal stuff that we have. So these are your regular source control repositories. Just to give you an idea of how this works in terms of workflow, I could start from here, but I can also open up an issue. So let's say github.com. Let's pull up my most recent project that I'm working on. This is a regular GitHub stuff that you also have in your GitHub environment. Maybe you don't have this button on the right, Copilot Chat. But either way, this is it looks normal. And so what could happen is I could have an issue that I want to work on, and I want to say, somebody came up to me and they told me, I'm trying to build this feature to upload attachments, and that's working, but I would like to list attachments in the front end, but I don't have an endpoint for that. So let's register an issue for that. Okay, new issue. There's no endpoint to retrieve attachments in the front end. In this case, I should explain that this is a chatbot where we can ask questions about our internal career framework. And one of the things that managers like to do at info support is upload files and then have a discussion about the file in combination with all the internal knowledge about career opportunities at info support. So in order to give them some idea of what sort of attachments that they have in a conversation, I need an endpoint to retrieve that in the front end. The front end in this case is built as a JavaScript application, and the backend is implemented as ASP.NET Core. So my issue, I can keep purely functional. I can say, okay, there's no endpoint to retrieve attachments. I need an endpoint in the front end to retrieve the list of attachments for a conversation. Can we please add that ASAP? Cool. This could be a developer that's doing it. So normally in GitHub, you would have on the right side, you have a couple of things that are sort of the metadata of your issue. So you can assign this to yourself or to somebody else. In this case, I'm assigning it to myself. I have some labels that I can attach. In this case, it is a bug. It's not working as intended. And I have some milestones. I don't use that in this project. And then you have this area called development. And normally, you would have something to open up a code space. So GitHub has this notion of remote development environments called code spaces. And code spaces are essentially a Docker container where you run your development tools in Visual Studio Code, and you can develop in. In my case, that's gone. I don't have that anymore. They broke it. At least that's what I figured when I tried this the first time. Instead, I have a button called Open in Workspace. And when I click that, I get back to GitHub code spaces, and something very, very special happens. It suddenly starts to suggest to me, oh, I know how to solve this task for you. That's kind of special. And basically, what it tells me here is that, how do I solve this issue? It's my intern talking to me. To solve the issue of adding an endpoint, I obviously need something in the controller, in the conversations controller, to get attachments. Okay, that sort of makes sense to me because I know that I wrote a controller in ASP.NET Core controller called Conversations Controller. And this one is actually responsible for managing the conversation aggregate, and connected to the conversation aggregate, there's a set of attachments that are related to a conversation. The second thing that it says here is that, oh, there's something in the front end as well. And here, exactly here, is where Copilot normally breaks. Copilot is only capable of handling one file in your code base. And you have to open that file in Visual Studio Code to generate stuff using AI. But Copilot Workspace is talking about a workspace, and the workspace being the whole source control in my case. And it figured out that I have a component in the front end called Use Assistant API. And Use Assistant API is the connection point in the front end that I can call to get access to all the methods on the server that are part of the API. And then the final one is update the front-end components to use the new function. It also knows that I somehow need to use this new method in the front end to retrieve a set of attachments to display on the screen. The sad thing is that it's wrong at this point, because I know that in the front end, I don't need to add attachments to the conversation messages component or the conversation history component. It has to be in the homepage view, but it doesn't know because I haven't told that. So right here, you see Copilot Workspace sort of working alongside you, helping you specify what needs to be implemented. And what I can do here is I can say, oh, wait, it's on the main branch. Let's select the other branch. That's actually the one that I'm using right now. And okay, it clears. So this is breaking currently. So what I need to do is I need to go back to GitHub and pull out my issue text again, because this breaks. That's not a problem. It's a technical preview. So here we go. Brainstorm. And what you see here is actually, so I just had a nice setup for the controller that's gone because I regenerated it, but it's not a big issue because I can go back and tell Copilot what to do. In this case, there are a few useful bits. So I know the create new function to use the endpoint, that's still useful, so I can add it to my task. And I can say, okay, in the home view component, I need to use the manage attachments dialog to show the conversation, the attachments, but this one's not right. So I should probably tell it that in the front end, we need to load the attachments in the home view. So right now what it says is, oh, wait a minute. I need to update home view. And in this case, I need to update the on-mounted lifecycle hook. That's basically what happens is if the homepage is loaded, then it should call the API endpoint and it should set the attachments. So part of this is useful again. So what I can do is I can say, okay, edit. Let's say the first one, I don't care. The home view components is interesting. To add unit tests. Thank you very much. Add to the task. Still, the controller is not there, so I'm going to tell it, how do we connect to the backend? And it still wants to talk about the front end stuff. So please add the list attachments endpoint to the conversations controller. Notice that I'm talking in functional terms. So sometimes I'm adding file names, sometimes I'm adding just functional terms because I can use both to talk to my code base. In this case, it gets back with the right piece of information. That's this one. That's interesting. Update the controller. It again figures out that I need to update the Use Assistant API in the front end, and it needs to update the home view. This is actually pretty useful. So what I'm going to do is remove it here and say, add this to the task. And then I think I've got it. I think I've got the specification for my code. I'm super happy that it figured out that I needed unit tests. And what I can do optionally is say here, oh, what should the new function be named, for example? So it does recommend function names and things like that, so I can figure that out. And in my case, it should probably be fetch conversation attachment. So far, so good. You can do this the whole day, but I think we should go on and generate a plan for this.
Yeah, and so Willem, this is already really impressing. But it's also, I think, important to note that you really know this code base, right? And you can guide the AI to a point where you know that it has figured everything out the way you want it to figure it out. So you wouldn't be able to do it on a code base that's totally unknown to you, because then you wouldn't be able to judge as well if the AI is coming up with a correct proposal or not, right?
Yeah, that's partially true. So you do need to know how your code is structured to fully understand what the AI is doing. You're not out of a job yet as a developer, I think.
That's good.
As a developer, you should know what the architecture is of your application and possibly know a lot about how the internal structure is created. However, what I just did is I asked to explain the structure of the backend. And in this case, it can tell me what the structure should be. So there's a domain layer, there's a data layer. Yeah, that's all correct. That's in there. Controllers, that's correct. An application layer, I have that. Infrastructure layer, I have that. And there's a shared portion of code that's also in there. And it sort of explains how it works. So while you do need a basic notion of your code base, I would say that you can use Copilot to figure out the rest of the code base.
Right.
So for a junior developer, this still makes sense. At least so far as I could have tested this, it made sense. I tried this with a couple of people while testing the thing.
Yeah,
So yeah, and we see this more as we go along implementing code. You will see that there's a lot of stuff that you need to know as a developer still.
Yeah, it will definitely be easier for new people to onboard onto a project using this kind of tooling.
Yeah. So this is fun. I'm done brainstorming, so I can close it and I can say generate plan. And what happens now is actually it's going to figure out which source files exactly I need to change. And what you see here is that it's modifying the conversations controller. It's modifying the connector in the front end, the use assistant API functionality. It's changing the home view. It's implementing tests for the backend, and it's modifying the conversation repository. And what you need to do now as a developer, you need to take a look and see what exactly is it going to do. This is all reviewing the design of the change. I guess this is where developers stop reading under normal circumstances, but it's still important to read what it's going to do. So what it will do is, it will create a new get endpoint. It will create a get attachments method. It will add a new function to the front end, and you should probably verify that this URL here at the top /API/conversations, and then the attachments bit is referenced in the front end. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense, of course.
But Willem, this is basically like doing a review, right, on the code that it suggests, or at least the changes that it suggests, right?
Yeah,
you as a developer must do the review to make sure that it makes sense and that it is correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I'm verifying the AI, and you're touching an important point here, is that I'm not writing code.
No,
I'm writing specifications and reviewing specifications. And if I find that something is not correct here, let's say the get attachments method is the wrong name, I can edit that.
Yeah.
And what I should also mention is that the order of operation matters in this case. So if you're trying to build new domain logic, it makes sense to first create the commands and the events and then extend the aggregate with the new functionality. So what I can do here is I can change the order of operations by moving them up and down. The way this works is actually Copilot Workspace will start implementing with this first file. And as soon as it's done, it's added to the context of the agent. And the agent is now capable of understanding that fetch conversation attachments should actually connect to this repository, to this controller. So when you introduce new concepts, new commands, new events, new classes in C# or in JavaScript or in Python, whatever you're using, the order here matters because you can enrich the context as you go along implementing it. think of it as you would implement code. So I have a certain way of building things. So I'm sorry, I'm not a TDD person. I'm sort of building a skeleton class and then adding tests to that. Does that make sense? Well, I don't know. It's the way that I work. But apparently, if you build the implementation first with Copilot Workspace, then adding tests afterwards makes a lot more sense. And that's because the AI is then capable of understanding your code, analyzing the code for any weaknesses that you should validate. So this plan is actually pretty important. For now, we'll stick to this one. We can spend a full hour reviewing things and discussing things. That's what I would do in a normal project. Maybe not an hour, but a bit more time than we have right now. So this looks sort of okay to me. I think that it's important to add unit tests to verify that the get attachments function is working. That makes sense. And I guess we should have a get attachments function in the repository class to retrieve them. How did this make this up? Well, it's looking at your code base. It's actually figuring out what the code base looks like, and it can load a bunch of files. It's quite a huge list, actually, of files that it uses. And you can go over them and review them if you need. So let's see. Let's implement some stuff. And this would be the moment where you get coffee. And if you're fast enough, if you can run, which I can't, then you can run to the coffee machine, get your coffee and get back and be too late. That's basically how fast this is. So what happens here is that it changes a couple of files and it's regenerating every single file here. That's kind of weird. They told me that this is the best option for them. I'm collapsing the files as they go, as they get generated because it's rather overwhelming. But you sort of, so what happens when you're done implementing code, you will see that there's a diff view in the middle here. So what I can do now is I can look at conversations controller and see whether we have the get attachments method. Yes, it's HTTP post. There's one. There's a delete option, and there's a get option in this case, get attachments. Fun fact, it's not green. So it detected that the method already existed. It wasn't capable of detecting that in the plan, so that's kind of stupid. Why is it not detecting it? But ultimately, when it starts implementing, it will look at your code and say, oh, it's already there. Never mind, I will skip that. So that's kind of cool. The second one is more interesting, I guess, because now I have a new function in green here in the middle. That's actually saying an async function, fetch conversation attachments, conversation ID. Okay, that makes sense. I'm calling fetch on /API/conversations, etc., etc. If it's not okay, I will throw an error, and otherwise you will get back a bunch of JSON from the API. And so what you can see is what actually changed in your code base, and you can verify, is that the correct thing? Oh, that makes sense to me that I have that. So it's defined the function, and I get it back in the use assistant API function as a callable function. Then the big question, of course, is, okay, what happened to the home page? Okay, when I select a conversation, it should fetch the attachments. So you can have a list of conversations on the left of the screen. And when you select a conversation, we load it in the middle portion of the screen. And then what it should do is fetch the messages of the existing conversation. I didn't tell it about attachments, and it still figured it out that I need that stuff when I select a conversation. So cool, thanks AI. Then there's, of course, a fetch attachments method, and that should do, it should call the assistant API with a fetch conversation attachments method. Okay, and it should load the attachments into a bindable object that I'm using in the front end. Cool, cool, cool. I can say, let's take a look if that attachments property actually exists. It's somewhere here at the top. It's here on line 54. So that looks all right to me. Fun fact, by the way, if you open up the homepage on the application, there isn't a conversation at all. So it should not load the attachments. And that makes sense as well. So it hasn't done that. So far, so good. And so what I could do here is say, yeah, that's all right, but let's brainstorm on this file. It has a couple of extra things that I can do. I can say enhance error handling. That could be a thing. Optimize data fetching. That could also be a thing that I can introduce. So you can expand upon the code that you wrote. So it's not a one-time generation step. It's actually multi-step. So you can go in iterations. So what I can do is I can look at this and say, this looks all right. It has a couple of, I don't think it actually added any tests. Get attachments. Yeah, it's already there. Should return attachments when the user is owner. That makes sense. If I get attachments from a conversation that doesn't exist, that also makes sense. But now, what if I try to load attachments for a conversation from somebody else? How does that work exactly? I forgot that test. Okay, let's select this file and say, include a test to verify that I can't retrieve attachments from a conversation that I don't own. So now it's targeting this one file, and I can update that. So if anything fails, if you break something, that's fine. You can go back and you can iterate on the file, or you can iterate on the whole conversation that you have with Copilot Workspace. And so what I have now is get attachment should return forbidden when user is not the owner. I don't agree. The controller returns not found when I don't own the conversation. So that's kind of wrong. Although the forbidden is not necessarily a bad thing. So what I can do now is I can look at the test, and it actually says not found. It didn't rename the method. So that's kind of, but at this point I figure, yeah, I can do that myself. So I can fix this. Now, of course, we don't trust AI. Well, at least I guess we don't trust AI. I don't know what you think, but it's sort of a bad idea to push that into production per se. So another question is, how can you verify that this actually works? Well,
that's actually a saying, right? Trust is good, but checking is better.
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, trusting is stupid. But it is kind of cool. What you have here in Copilot Workspace, and I just clicked on this small toggle terminal option in my screen. There's a terminal behind this. So Copilot Workspace runs on a CodeSpace. It's running a Docker container with my development environment. And what I can do is I can say, okay, let's info support agents.eva.tests. It's Linux, so capitals matter. .NET test. And what I can do now is I can actually run that new test. In this case, it's going to run every single test that I have. Lucky for me, I have a test container running with Postgres. So I can run my database tests. I can run the full Monty inside this CodeSpace. And it will take a long time to run, I guess. It's not the fastest machine, but you have the option to run it. And this makes the Copilot Workspace the one-stop shop where you can change your code. Most CodeSpace containers that are available out of the box have Node.js, Python, .NET, Java SDKs, Go, Rust. All the stuff is included, so you can run most things inside the CodeSpace. And if you feel like I need to do more than just the simple things in this div view, you even have the option to open the CodeSpace inside Visual Studio Code. So that will, again, it's not the fastest thing in the world, but you have the option. So you can go back and watch, go look at other things in the code base.
And Willem, question. Everything that you did up until now, you did that in the GitHub website, right?
Yeah.
Is that also possible through extensions in VS Code, the entire process, or do you need to do that for now in the GitHub website?
No, it is possible to do that through the extension. So as you can tell, this is rather slow and it's annoying. I said the same thing to the GitHub Next team. And so they hooked me up with something new. And so I have my Copilot, I would say Copilot editor, but it's Visual Studio Code on my machine. And I have it set up. Yeah, it's almost, for me, it's almost not a code editor anymore. GitHub Copilot Workspace extension. And I've got an early preview version here, so it's kind of incomplete and it doesn't do a whole lot of things. So what I get when I open up the Copilot Workspace extension is I get sessions that I've got running in the background. So I can select this top session, that's the one that we are working on right now. And it will show me nothing right now, which is interesting. Refresh. Yeah, there we go. It's, well, it doesn't, no, that's absolutely not what I meant. Please work. It's not working today. Okay, so never mind the details. In this case, they broke it. They are working on an update right now, so the server API changed. But I have the list of sessions, and I can say sync the changes to my local machine. And what it does now, it's going to pull in the changes that we have in the browser. And you will have, okay, I don't care, do your thing. Okay. Let's hope it works. No, it doesn't do that. Let's go back to this one. Yeah. And discard. I don't want all that stuff. This one. Nah, they completely broke the extension right now. Okay, never mind. But there is an extension, and you can sync the changes to your local machine, and you can do the .NET Run, .NET Test. You can edit the files. You can do all sorts of things that you are normally doing in Visual Studio Code. And if you leave Visual Studio Code open, you can even use tools like Visual Studio and Rider. Because Visual Studio Code is watching the disk and going to sync all the files back and forth between your session in the browser and the local environment. Like I said, it's a technical preview, so some things will break because I've got a very early version of things. But normally, this all works, and you can get changes synced to the browser again and work on them. So what is interesting is that once you are happy with the changes, you can say, okay, I've tested everything. It looks all right. There are no further issues. I can create a pull request. And this is interesting because I can now attach a share link to my pull request. Otherwise, it's a normal pull request that you know and love or hate if you're a maintainer. And I can describe the changes made in the pull request, but if you're ultimately lazy, you can just say, generate the thing for me, and it will do the right stuff for you. And then when I create a pull request, in this case, I can do that. What is important to remember here is that you are in control as a developer. So you saw me review every piece of information on the screen. It takes time. It feels rather slow. But generating the code is like nothing. It's done in seconds. So it's well worth the time reviewing stuff. And the other tip that I have for everyone who's building software on GitHub, please set up a workflow for yourself, because it's essential now to have a GitHub action workflow behind this that verifies your pull request. So I have this pull request, and currently it's waiting for the build to start. But normally you would have a in progress indicator here that runs the build for you. And the other thing that's really important is the share link. So I can share a session with other people. So why is that important? Well, this sort of gives away the fact that I used AI to write this. So if I have a lead developer on the team that needs to approve the pull request, they can go back to my session and look at what was the original plan, what was the implementation that took place. All the steps can be reviewed again, and that gives extra assurance that things are all right to merge. So yeah, that's the full flow actually for GitHub Copilot. I actually implemented a full feature, getting attachments from the backend into the front end and attaching them to the UI in a matter of minutes, rather than spending half an afternoon trying to build this.
Pretty
So
awesome.
Willem, is there maximum retention time for those sessions?
No, there's not a maximum retention time. There is one caveat here, that this is just a regular link. And what I can do is I can go here to the homepage of, I can go to the homepage.
I don't think we're seeing
Copilot.
your screen at the moment.
No, I will just put it back.
Yeah.
So you can see here recent sessions, and I can throw away the session. So what happens is, if I throw away the session, the link is broken and you got nothing. That's a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
If you ask me. But I think that they're going to add functionality to control the behavior here with a policy that basically says you are not allowed to delete sessions for this repository.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that it's
That
traceable.
would be good. Yeah.
The other thing that's also important to note here is that you have the option to block Copilot Workspace. So you can put a special file in your repository, a policy file that basically says, for this repository, you're not allowed to use Copilot Workspace, or you are not allowed to create pull requests using Copilot Workspace. The option of creating pull requests is mainly meant for blocking those automated descriptions that don't make a lot of sense for people.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's good to know for the people that don't like AI submissions. Yeah, you can block that. That's all built in. In the case, I mean, it's a matter of responsible AI, I think, to make sure that you only use this properly and not for garbage pull requests in the case of Hacktoberfest or some of those other events.
Well, Hacktoberfest is coming up, so it's going to be interesting to see the amount of garbage pull requests compared to last year.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm curious. I think I'm going to build a tool to watch for those changes. I don't know how, but I will figure that out.
Well, you use GitHub Workspaces.
Yeah, it makes sense to use it for that. Yeah.
Well, cool stuff, Willem. Thanks for showing us that. And I was just thinking to myself, like, yeah, it takes quite some time to go through this process, but I think that if I see a lot of code that gets written nowadays, everyone would be better off just thinking a little bit longer upfront about what am I actually going to build, because I think in the end you will get a better quality code, and also generating the tests obviously is that's a game changer. That's something that will really give you some time back when you start working on a code base. So pretty awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, and that Visual Studio Code plugin that you showed but didn't work exactly, that's only in preview right now. Is there any idea when this stuff will become public preview or even GA? I know we cannot talk about dates, but
no, I don't know the date. I know one date that is important. That's the GitHub Universe keynote. GitHub Universe is happening on October 29 and October 30. They are going to announce the next step in this whole project.
Okay.
I don't know what it looks like exactly. They told me some stuff, but I can't repeat it here. But keep an eye out on that. And if you're interested in trying it yourself, there is an option to sign up on the website. You should. So what you can do is you can search for Copilot Workspace in Google, and you will get the waiting list. It's a long waiting list, I know. There are not a lot of people testing this at the moment, and I guess that's due to the fact that it's sometimes pretty broken still. But yeah, it's interesting. If people are interested, I think they will open up more spaces after GitHub Universe.
Okay.
And when it's released, we don't know, but they're going at a furious pace. So I guess that will be soon.
Yeah. Okay. So people, be on the lookout for any news on this. Just scour the internets, and things will be awesome. So thanks, Willem, for showing us this. I think it's pretty awful stuff, and I guess it's also still early days, right? This will become better and better and faster. So there's lots of stuff coming in the future. But thanks for that. Everybody at home, thank you for watching. If you like .NetFlix, please subscribe to the channel, and then we'll see you at the next episode. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.